Thank you, Architect Lilian. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And selamat pagi kepada semua. So I feel very honored to be invited as a panel to discuss this important subject this morning. And I think, as mentioned by the chairman just now, the topic can be very wide, but I'll try to remain as focused as possible on the smart cities issues. But however, my focus will remain on construction, and then I think all of us know the effect of how we construct can cause to those who owns, lives, or operate the constructed facilities. As we all aware, as you all know, what drives us in Cidb in drafting our strategic planning for the coming 5 to 10 years. Number one is the Wawasan Kemakmuran Bersama, as mentioned earlier. The second one is, of course, the Sustainable Development Goals. And the latest one is a My Digital Economic Blueprint. And also we take care of the various plans on the IR 4.0, for example, by Industry 4.0. And then the most relevant to this smart cities concept is we came out with Construction 4.0, which was launched by the minister late last year, Works Minister, I mean, late last year. And then it is especially a broad strategic plan for 5 years, for the coming 5 years. Most of the initiatives that are mentioned inside that plan either embedded or support or are in line with the smart cities 7 components. So that's why I think I'd like to discuss a little bit further on this CR 4.0. In drafting that thing, I think can we move on the slides? Next. Next. Yes, we start here. In drafting all the initiatives in the CR 4.0, we have taken care of the concept of from cradle to grave. For example, in construction life cycle, we start the planning from planning, design, construction, and also the operation and maintenance part. So for all those components, we have programs in it. Let me share a little bit about what we have in that plan. The first one, if we identify that there will be 12 technologies that the committee call it disruptive technologies, that either we have to adopt or they will make us adopt the technology. The example here is the first one is the building information modeling, the BIM. Second one is a prefabrication and modular construction, or what we usually call it IBS. The third one is autonomous construction, augmented reality and visualization, cloud and real-time collaboration, 3D scanning and photogrammetry, big data and predictive analysis, Internet of Things for construction, the 3D printing, advanced building materials, blockchains, and artificial intelligence. Of course, those 12 technologies are some are available now, some are available in the near future, and some may need more research. But those are the plans. For this presentation, I think I'd like to share what we are doing now, because that is more important. What we have now and what we're going to do in the very near future. I will give you examples. For example, when we refer back to the definition of 7 components of smart cities and in relation to the 12 technologies just now, for the smart economy, in terms of increasing productivity, we already have what we call it productivity measurement tools. That one we can identify or do some assessment on how productive a project is being constructed. The second one is on the smart environment. Now we are working together with the SW Corp in the management of construction waste. For example, how we deal with the waste, construction waste, and how we recycle, reuse, and recycle, reuse, recycle again. So those are the programs that we are doing with SW Corp, and we are measuring that at construction site. Also, we have produced 3 guidelines for resilient construction under smart environment as well. There's the risk management for landslides area, and the risk management for flood areas, and also construction on pit and soft soils. So those are the things that we have. And currently, we are doing some studies on the greenhouse gas for construction sector with relevant stakeholders, because we think the contribution of construction to low carbon city is quite important here. And of course, under the smart people, we are doing a lot of trainings in terms of competency for the city dwellers, for the city youth and workers, training, competency, and so on. And for the smart government side, we have Malaysian construction portals, and we are doing e-training, e-assessment, and e-applications. Those are the examples that we have a program on the ground. And then we, of course, have a lot more things we want to collaborate with the industries to support the smart city concept and initiatives. Let me share with you. So, because earlier this morning, somebody mentioned about Malaysian need to develop smart cities, Malaysian standards. So actually, in doing that, Cidb was given the privilege to chair that National Standards Committee, and we call it NACD, is under construction, which will look into the development of Malaysian standards for smart cities. So we very happy to invite the interested party together to develop the Malaysian standards. And also under the My Digital Economic Blueprint, PKT and Cidb was also given the task to chair the working groups on the rolling out smart cities. So I think that is also another opportunity or a forum for us together to enhance mechanism to roll out smart cities. So basically, those are the initiatives that we are doing currently, and we are supporting very much the industry and all other stakeholders to realize the smart city concept in near future. I stop here first. Architect Lilian.
Thank you, Dr. Elias. Dr. Elias.
Yeah.
I think you have given us a lot of information on more on the physical construction works. Before we move to the group forum, I would like to ask you one hot question, which is if you can touch on how smart city framework and smart city policy and initiatives, how would you plan to transition from our very labor-intensive construction model now? How do you plan to, how can you use the smart city framework and agenda to transition to be less reliant on foreign workers in our construction industry?
From my understanding, when we talk about smart cities, I think it boils down to the people. To the people, how people live in the city. Is the livable? How livable? How we can make life simpler and more smarter. So in terms, when we take that into account, for example, when we try to make things smarter, we will use a lot of more on technology. whether in terms of digital technology or in terms of physical technology. So when we turn our attention to using more, to utilization of more technology, I think as we have discussed in a lot of forums before, the terms of IBS, BIM will come in. So those are the things that we have to follow through further and in more aggressive ways so that we will achieve many objectives. And also the objective of what you mentioned just now, to reduce our reliance on low-cost labor, I think. So I think they will play a big role in that achieving those objectives.
Do you feel that there is some resistance from construction industry players to move towards this less labor-reliant model because it may raise the cost of construction, because we now perceive as foreign labor as cheap, and most of the current players are may not or are reluctant or are hesitant to invest the large initial investment to make that big step to go into much more highly modular construction. Is how do you see the role of Cidb to assist that transition, to allay those fears? I think even in the industry, I believe they are concerned that it may actually make it more expensive. And certainly the initial steps to get the system going, you don't get the returns yet. You have to invest quite a bit. Is that, speaking about funding, how do you address that?
I think the first thing that we need to look at, for example, the current pandemic, COVID-19, is if we look at a positive from positive perspective, I think other than things that affect our lives. But on the other side, for the construction industry, it's just like a reset button. Because, for example, now it's not going to be cheap anymore to employ the foreign workers, because the border is now closed, and then we have to make do with whatever we have. And then there's a lot of other initiatives as well. For example, the minimum requirement for housing accommodation for workers, that one will definitely make it the foreign worker not a cheaper option anymore. It's going to be, I think it's going to be increase the cost for hiring the foreign workers. So I think it's just a matter of time. The construction industry people will move towards adoption of technology. I think it's the right way to go.
Yes, I think you have answered and seen the reality is that with all the pandemic is probably not just going to go away. There may be different forms of public health crisis that come. Borders may now from here on have to periodically open and close. And yes, I think we will see that the cost and speed of getting labor onto sites will be a much bigger obstacle than it had been earlier. Yeah, I do hope that Cidb also will play a role similarly as what Dr. Raslan had mentioned, Encik Sabri also had mentioned, that there is a need in the initial investment to also appreciate the intangible value and the long-term return of investing, since a lot of the impetus of today's discussion has raised the issue on funding, where to get funding and how to get funding. It will look as if whether it's government agencies, development agencies, private sector, that it may not just be based on the immediate ROI, but to put in the more long-term, less tangible value to the community and to the industry. I think that same message came across from your presentation, from Dr. Raslan, from Sheikh Musabri. I think we shall go on some general questions, and we also have quite a lot of questions from the audience that we'll be going through. I think there is a specific question actually while we are on CIDB for you, Dr. Elias. What will be CIDB's plan in promoting BIM in Malaysia while we are on the technical questions?
Actually, on BIM, building the information modeling program, it started quite some time ago during the CITP period, the construction industry transformation program period, about 5 years ago. So we began little bit by little bit, and then we put some funding here and there, incentives, and so on. But now at the second stage, I think we have to be more aggressive in terms of supply and demand. On the supply side, I think CIDB will continue to facilitate the industry in terms of trainings, in terms of providing guidance and developing standards and modules and so on. But on the demand side, I think for the government projects, there's been initiative for some form of what you call it, mandatory for certain projects to utilize BIM in their design and tender and construction. So I think little bit by little bit, I think the industry will take up that BIM issue, because either by enforcement or by their own initiative in terms of benefiting from that BIM projects. When you ask specifically what plan do we have in promoting BIM, actually we combine all those initiatives, for example, in terms of policy, in terms of incentives and trainings and guiding. And also we are working with even as part of the Smart City program, I think we are working with still working with PPJ also in terms of one OSC 3+ and also NBES, National BIM E-Submission, which previously is under the pilot project stage. Now I think because we can see the benefit, we will promote that more. Yeah.
Yes, I think coming from the same industry, I do appreciate that it's quite difficult. I do see there are many levels that you need to drive intelligent technology, new tech, and BIM being the most universal vehicle to link from design all the way to construction and on the site. I think currently some of the problems with the industry is that most of the players at the design level, many consultants are small to medium-sized practice. As you know, that's the nature of consultants firms. More than 80% of architects and engineer firms are actually companies below 15 to 20 persons. That is a known fact, and therefore they are slow to put in the investment to train as well as to procure the hardware and software. These are very specific softwares and higher capacity hardware that's needed to be able to convert fully to a BIM platform. So I have seen over the last, as you mentioned, it had started through the CITP some years back, but it's hard to implement them because of the nature of the whole supply chain coming from designers and consultants being a bit less able or reluctant to invest in it. And even so, those even if one doesn't do it, all collapses like dominoes. If the architect does it and the engineer can't do it, you have to stop. You can't go past the preliminary schematic level of using BIM or Revit. And similarly, I personally have also seen projects where we are asked to do it on a BIM platform, but the contractors in the tender are actually not ready to do it, and it actually causes a lot of initial delay for them to prepare and prep to prepare their documents on their site to integrate into the model. So I think we know that you have a very large, you need to address many levels in the entire supply chain through from design to delivery. So that's a big task, which is a continuing task.